Hey guys, Zach back here with Clutch Crew Sports, and today we've got another analysis video for that we're gonna put forward for you guys. It's gonna be analysis for NFL's Week 2 and college football's Top 25 Week 3, and I'm joined by Eric and Connor, the same cast as the last Tuesday episode. So we've got some familiarity uh, with how this show will be run. But the this was a crazy weekend in sports, and not so much of it was from the actual games themselves. There's a lot of news coming out after the games with injuries and trades and that sort of thing that's really starting to dominate and is going to be dominating the storylines for this week. And we'll be covering that stuff a lot too in our next episode for our previews for next week, because the Jalen Ramsey thing, he might actually end up being traded by that time in that episode. But Minkah Fitzpatrick's already been traded, and there's guys with injury news we're going to cover in this. But we're also going to look at the games played and tell you guys our thoughts on what we liked, what we didn't like, and the games that were close and really competitive this week. And we've got college here too to talk about, but this week for college was kind of a down week, in my opinion, similar to last week. We were talking before the podcast about how next week's lineup of games is going to be a lot better, with Notre Dame, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Auburn, I believe, are playing.
Yep.
Wisconsin and Michigan. So those are three quality games right there. Plus, there's other conference games too that are going to be of note and of importance. So the college games for next week, the spreads are going to be a lot tighter, and we're not going to be seeing too many, schools like Lamar in our top 25 game picks here. I think Lamar's got its one and only appearance in our podcast. If you go to Lamar or know anyone that has, tell us your thoughts on Lamar University, because none of us know anything about them. But we'll get going to the schools that are really going to matter for college football now. So Friday's game, Washington State at Houston. Washington State won by only a touchdown, so we all got that game wrong. The spread was 8.5, so pretty close. Arkansas State at Georgia. We all got it right. Georgia won 55-0, so they covered pretty easily. Ohio State at Indiana. This was a blowout game that I did not see coming, and I really got this one wrong, because I thought this was going to be the type of game Ohio State might end up losing on the road to an unranked Big Ten team, but they took care of business and easily covered the 16-point favorites that they were presented with. And then a rivalry game here with Pitt and Penn State. Penn State won by 7, and so we all got that wrong because they were favored by 17. But that was a really close game, and some coaching errors by Pitt. I kind of saw that and thought, wow, this isn't giving me much confidence for Pitt for the rest of the season if their coach is making these kind of weird decisions. And specifically, I'm talking about not going for a 4th and 1 in the red zone when there was only a couple minutes left in the game and they were down by 7. At that point, you've got to go for the touchdown. You've got to try and score and make it go to overtime. You can't hope for your defense to get a 3 and out and get the ball back with enough time to score again. And even if you don't get the 4th down, then you still potentially have a shot to pin them back deep and make them and have good field position on your next possession if you get a next possession. But so I disagreed with that. And that was really the only storyline that I followed for college this week. I didn't get to watch many games or see anything about college, so I'm really going off Connor and Eric's limited knowledge about this week too, but they have more than me. And then Maryland at Temple. Temple got the win 20-17. I predicted Temple would get the win, and it's one of the few underdog predictions that I got right this week.
Maryland killed me like they did last week.
Yep. From now on, I've said if Maryland's in the top 25 or playing the top 25 team, I'm just going to see what Connor picks and then pick
it. So if Maryland goes up against Ohio State, and I pick Ohio State, Zach's going to pick Maryland.
Yep.
Well, I saw this crazy thing, too, about Maryland, where this was, like, their fourth game in a row where they go from being unranked to being in the top 25, but then losing. Like, as soon as they get in the top 25, they lose. It's like 4 times in a row or something like that. I was like, so if that ever happens again, too, because they'll most likely go out of the top 25.
They did.
They did.
So if they get back into the top 25 at some point this season, pick the other team. They're not going to.
Well, I mean, and considering that they couldn't convert after the Temple punter had that 7-yard punt.
Yeah,
and it's and he was punting from his own end zone, and he had a 7-yard punt, and it's like, how did you not manage to get a touchdown off of that drive when you're starting at almost the 10-yard line?
And
oh man, that's terrible.
The drive
I didn't see
before that too.
God, that's bad.
Yeah.
The drive before that too, they got they went. It was they had first and goal at the 7 or something. They got to the 1 on 3rd down. They couldn't get it, and they didn't get it on 4th down either. So Temple had 2 really impressive defensive stands there, faced with pressure. So. But that 7-yard punt, that was so bad.
Well, actually, I saw this on Come On Man too, whereas there was a punt earlier in the game where
they talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, where he muffed it, or where the punter couldn't handle it and it went out the back of the end zone. But the punter was yelling at the long snapper because it wasn't the greatest snap in the world, but the punter could have handled it. But he was on the sideline yelling at the long snapper. So then they showed that punt later on. I was like, okay, you can't blame that one on the long snapper for that 7-yard punt.
Yeah.
That's all you.
Dang, dude.
Yeah. No clapping or anything after that one. Those punters and kickers, jump up and down when the moment comes. But fortunately for him, he was able to survive that because his team won the game. But New Mexico at number 7 Notre Dame. Connor was the only one that got this right, as Notre Dame easily covered the 35-point spread. 66-14 is the final score. And Notre Dame snapped their streak against the spread when they're 30-point favorites. Nate mentioned that as his research from the last episode. And I'd already picked New Mexico, but hearing that made me feel even more confident. But seeing Notre Dame win by that big of a margin, I was surprised with, just from the history that had been going on there. And then Alabama played South Carolina, the first SEC game for Alabama. They won 47-23. We all got that right, with the spread being 22.5 points. Stanford at number 17 UCF. UCF won 45-27, crushing the 7.5 point spread that they had. We all got it right. BYU in an upset win over USC. They improved at 2-1 now in the season, getting a field goals win over the Trojans. And Nate was the only one who got this one right. I can't remember if he projected them to win outright or if USC would win by a field goal.
I think he projected them to win.
Okay.
Usually when the spread's that close,
yeah,
it's pretty much it's pretty much a pick 'em usually when the spread's that close.
Mm-hmm. The next game, 10-7, was the final score. Arizona State beating Michigan State, and Connor was watching this, and we've got the really crucial play at the end of the game here to show you guys on YouTube to watch. So just take a watch here. Oh, that man, I thought that was going into the last second. Said
wide left.
Yeah, so, well, and even, like, I forgot to mention this, but even, like, the Arizona State's touchdown drive before that was, like, a really close. They, like, barely got it into the end zone on that. They had to review it, but Arizona State got it. So, Michigan State got led down the field, but then, yeah, I think it was right here. It was just, like, it was clearly a touchdown, but it was still close. Like, but then Michigan State, you know, their quarterback led them down the field, and then he
made this one.
Yeah, here's the previous play that he made the field goal, but basically Michigan State got called for 12 men, and they actually had to go to the booth to review it, and they reviewed it and saw, yes, that there was indeed 12 men on the Michigan State side. So it's like, okay, well, now we have to come back and kick this field goal again, which, you know, led to Shankopotamus over there. And then
Shankopotamus. Oh my gosh!
But then after that, so there was that controversy on the previous play with the 12 men, but there was also controversy on this play too, where if you want to keep an eye on the guy, and I think it was
December 15.
It was either number 15 or number 16 . I can't remember.
If you want to, the one in front of the ref, because he charges.
Yeah, it's 15. He's running.
Keep an eye on number 15 right here. How he ends up leaping over the line, which that should have been a personal foul call on Arizona State, which would have given Michigan State another chance to kick that field goal. So a lot of craziness happening at the end of that game, but hashtag Shankopotamus on the Michigan State
and not only
there.
that, the Michigan State kicker missed 2 other field goals earlier in the game, so it shouldn't even have come down to all this.
Yeah.
But,
wow.
Hashtag Shankopotamus.
I would not want to be that kicker, like, going to class on Monday. Like, like that would suck.
Yeah, hide yourself. All right, so Iowa and Iowa State, a big rivalry game in the state of Iowa, and Iowa
really
Iowa comes on top, 18-17. And Nate and I got it right just because we picked Iowa State in the 2.5 points. But Iowa won the game. Connor was frustrated with that.
Yeah. I told these guys I was watching the game and I was all excited because I was like, oh, Iowa's going to win. I'm going to get this pick right. But then I had the unfortunate realization of, well, crap, they're winning by 1 and the spread was 2.5. So,
yeah.
But also just want to mention there's a huge gaffe here at the end of the game on Iowa State's part. Oh my gosh. So basically you see the clock down there. It was 1:34 left in the game. And Iowa was up 18-17. They were up by 1 point. And so Iowa State was going to get the ball back and Iowa punted it to them. So normally when you call a fair catch, obviously, like if the other team runs into you, then it's a 15-yard penalty when you call a fair catch. Well, unfortunately for the Iowa State punt returner, it wasn't the Iowa guy who ran into him. If you keep an eye on the guy in the red jersey here in this clip, the guy right there. His own teammate ran into him, and the ball bounced off of his teammate's back right there, and Iowa recovered it and was able to run out the clock.
I don't understand this guy right here with the dreads. Shoves the Iowa guy out of the way, even on a fair, it's a fair catch, so his awareness,
so if he hits them, then you don't need to shove the Iowa guy because if he hits him, then it's a 15-yard penalty for you.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that guy just had a brain fart or something.
Toast on the food review, man.
Taco Bell's new cheddar something.
Toasted cheddar chalupa actually looks pretty good.
Now we've got Alex Morgan here in the screen. What is fate?
We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but just a pretty hilarious gaffe there at the end of the game for Iowa State when they could have had a chance to win it and just completely blew it.
Yep. The Idaho State Bengals took the loss to Utah.
The Bengals. Oh my gosh.
I think the story for We've actually talked about that before on this show. I think you guys have mentioned that.
Yeah, I think Eric talked about it one time.
Yeah.
When I ranted about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
I mentioned it briefly, yes.
So Utah shut out Idaho State 31-0, but unfortunately we all got that wrong. If they had scored another touchdown, we would have gotten it right, but we got it wrong. And then Kent State at Auburn. Auburn won pretty easily, 55-16. Connor was the only one that got that right. And then Florida at Kentucky. This was a really close game. Florida won by 8 points, but there was a touchdown after the game was pretty much over that made it the score look.
Well, Florida came back in that game.
Yeah, Florida did have a comeback too. So, but with the spread, that ended up being a tie, and we don't include ties as in our standings, so we just ignore it. But this is going to be Eric's rant of the week. So, Eric, stage is yours.
Yeah, I have to rant a little bit about this game. Now, I don't watch a lot of college football, so I will preface this by saying going into this, I don't know how the situation would normally go, but I just got really upset about the targeting rule in this game because there were situations for both teams where players got ejected for targeting when, to me, it just doesn't really make sense. Like, I don't know if we have. Is this the one? This is the one with the Gator.
This will be the
the
first.
We don't have. I don't know the first one. I was trying to search for it. Like a mystery on the first one. I don't know.
Yeah,
there was a Kentucky player who got ejected like in the first quarter for targeting.
Yeah, and I did not see that one, so I hadn't started watching the game yet. But see, to me, like Zach's going to let the play run here. I know it's going to go in slow mo, so I'll kind of, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. But you're going to see what happens here is when the Kentucky quarterback throws the ball, when the Kentucky player comes down with it, the Gator safety is going to come into the play right here, number 13.
Yeah, so keep an eye on this guy. He's the one going to be targeted.
He's coming in to make the tackle. And as the Kentucky player's pulling away, yeah, you can go ahead and play it out. So he's going to like hit him in the shoulder or chest area right there. And yes, that's a hard hit, but you know, the players, they have pads on, and it was like that looked like a clean tackle to me. And to me, this shouldn't even have been a penalty in this particular instance, yet alone a player getting ejected. But my main thing that I don't like about the targeting rule is I don't like how a player is necessarily automatically ejected if a targeting penalty gets called, because they get plenty of time to review this when they review whether these plays are targeting or not. They look at it's not like they look at it in live, at live speed when it first happens and then have to make a judgment call on whether it's a targeting penalty or not. They get time to look it over. And so, I mean, for this player to be ejected for what looks like a clean tackle is absurd to me. And if anybody's watching this knows me, you know that I hate the Gators like more than anything in life. Like, I mean, so for me to be advocating for this, like, this should tell you something, because as a Gator hater, normally I would be like, oh, cool, the guy got ejected. Cool, get him out of there. Like, that helps Kentucky.
No. Hey, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye, wave, goodbye. You know what I mean? But now we're gonna get. But then there's this other one later in the game on Kentucky, and this is at a really critical point in the game because there's less than 6 minutes left in the game. Kentucky had a pretty big lead, but now Florida's trying to get the momentum back. It's 2nd and 10. And so, Zach, I'll let you let this play run out. So first you're going to see a guy come in.
Number 90.
Yeah, but before that, there's another, 45 or 15, and wraps it. Now the Gator player is lower to the ground. So as the Kentucky player, number 90, dives in to make the sack, he ends up hitting the Gator player in the head, which draws this next targeting penalty. And this is huge because, first of all, this would have been like third and probably like 17 or something like that for the Gators. But then they get this targeting penalty, which gives them a 15 yards and an automatic first down. And number 90 is ejected from the game. So I don't really agree with this either, because I think players in this situation, when there's a lot of players gathered around and they're going for tackles like that, there's going to be inadvertent hits in the helmet like all the time. To me, the targeting rule needs to me, it's more, I like it better like in the other situation where there's a receiver coming down with a catch and they're defenseless and then they get hit in the head, and that is where there should be a targeting more so. But I still disagree with that first one because he didn't really hit him in the head. But this one, I don't think number 90 could really help that the Gator player was lower to the ground, because normally in that situation, if the Gator player is standing upright, the way number 90 goes in for the tackle, he hits him in the chest or stomach and it's a clean tackle and it would be a sack. But because of number 15 wrapping him up, which lowered him down a little bit, that made number 90 to me hit the quarterback in the head. And so I don't like either targeting call. Now, I mean, as I said before, I don't watch a lot of college football. You know, I don't see like many targeting hits and what's drawn as targeting. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like a expert on this, but to me, this is too soft of a rule. And even with this one, even if you want to call the helmet to helmet for a 15-yard penalty, fine. But number 90 should not have been ejected from the game for this. This was not a malicious hit. He's not like trying to kill the quarterback. He's trying to sack. I mean, what is he supposed to do? Like make an adjustment and then just wrap his arms around him and like, oh, nope, you can't tackle him like that. You got to, I don't know. It's really frustrating for me to watch because, you know, obviously I hate the Gators. I didn't want him to win, but I mean, I was enjoying the game. And when the Gator guy got ejected, I didn't think that was right. I didn't think that number 90 getting ejected was right either. And it, you know, who knows like how the team could have been changed if they don't call that. I mean, that was a huge situation. And I mean, obviously I know like the Kentucky, you know, coaches and stuff were really pissed off about it. They were mentioning it in their press conferences, but obviously if you're the team that loses because of something like that, you're going to be mad. But I don't know. I mean, I know we've talked about this like off the air, and I know Connor and Zach, you know, feel a little bit differently than I do about this rule, but it's not the targeting rule that I'm against, but since they review these, to me, in my opinion, they really need to, I think they need to make a change to the rule, I guess, regarding the ejections, at least. You know, 15-yard penalty for helmet to helmet, obviously. You know, if it's a completely defenseless player and the guy, like, almost blows his head off, obviously he should be ejected from the game. But when it's these guys trying to make a clean tackle and then it's more so, like, inadvertent to me, I don't see why a player gets ejected from that. Because what if there's, like, a accidental contact, like what happened, you know, to number 90 there, like on one of the first plays of the game? You mean to tell me he can't come in, he's ejected for the entire game? Like, I don't know. I don't like it. I personally would like to see college football make a change in the future about this. Maybe I'm in the minority, I don't know, but that's my rant topic for today. I would really like to see a change made with that in the future.
Yeah, so I'd say most of your rants, Eric, that you've made have been unanimous agreements with, but for this one, Connor and I think, disagree with you a little bit, but I understand certain instances where this rule can, like the ejections thing, and I also brought this up too, how, and I don't know the answer to this. If anybody wants to do all the research and stuff, they can. But I'm curious as to if the targeting rule, since it's been out for about 5 years now, if it's actually led to a decrease of these kind of hits. Because the whole point, I don't think these two players that got ejected, I don't think they deserve to be ejected. But it's the threat of the ejection that I think is the goal of the NCAA, to be like, okay, we're threatening your ejection if you do this. So has that created less of these, helmet to helmet concussion type of injuries and stuff, and made the game a little bit safer, which I don't know the answer to that, but I think if it has, I think it's fine as it is. I wouldn't change the rule, but if it hasn't, then I would consider maybe easing back on the ejection qualifications, just because that's the whole point of this. These hits.
Yeah, I mean that's where my head. I mean, like I said, if like a receiver is coming down with a catch and a safety flies in there and knocks his helmet off because he hits him so hard, obviously, something like that should be. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any ejections like ever, but to me, like I said, since they can review this stuff, it's not like they have to determine lifetime. It's not like when that Gator one happened that I didn't like. If they weren't able to look at that in a replay, in lifetime, it looked like it could have been, a crazy hit, but they reviewed it. You could see clearly that even though he did lead with his helmet, he did not hit the Kentucky player in the head, but he still got ejected from the game. Like, I don't know. And even and with the other, I mean, I don't know if this is just two bad examples where the referees didn't do a good job. I mean, I'm sure the majority of the time they get it right, but I think they need to change what merits an ejection and what doesn't. I mean, like I said, I'm fine with the threat of ejection if you're going to go out there and make a malicious hit on purpose, or something like that. But if it's something that looks like more of an accident, okay, give them the 15-yard penalty, but don't eject them from the game. I think they need to. I'm just asking for a tweak. I'm not saying they have to completely get rid of ejections or completely get rid of the rule in general, but there has to be some kind of adjustment made, I think, to try to fix this a little bit.
Well, I'm going to answer Zach's question about has it increased or not. So here's an article that came out. It was December 19th of 2017. So this was about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years now that this has come out. So this was 2017. It said, targeting penalties in the top tier of college football reached an all-time high this season, and the Pac-12 and SEC had the most players flagged. It has been 10 years since the crackdown started on forcible hits above the shoulders of players determined to be defenseless. This season, the NCAA reported 188 enforced calls in 832 games. That is 31% more than last year when they were 144 in 839 games. It is the fourth consecutive season that targeting calls have increased.
Wow.
Now, but the article does go on to say that there was a guy he's basically the NCAA's national coordinator of officials. He says that he thinks the reason why it's going up is not because players are scared of the ejection or anything. That's why it's not decreasing. He thinks it's because the officials are better at detecting it now. So it's not acting as a deterrent, but the reason why they're increasing is because the officials are better at detecting it because they're looking for it more.
Yeah,
but it is going up. It hasn't gone down. So.
And that's the thing. You would think it would go down. I mean, with that rule, with you being potentially ejected, you would think that defensive coaches would be all right, save yourself from, don't make as big of a hit or try and hit differently to save yourself from being ejected. You would think it would have an impact. I mean, this game is played so fast, you really don't have time to think about that. So I can understand why, but the fact that it's going up, that's just really interesting to hear. This might be something we talk about later in the season too, if it comes up again when one of us is watching a game and witnesses this. But because from the most part, I would say when I watch college games and I see targeting calls, they tend to get it right. And that's why I haven't really had an issue with this rule, because they are allowed replay. And it's actually, I want to say it's not even the officials in the game that make the call. I think it's league officials. So if it's an SEC game, I think in Birmingham, they make the determination. I assume other conferences have the same sort of thing in different cities.
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, because there was a targeting call in the App State UNC Charlotte game last week, and I thought it was a pretty good call. Like the UNC Charlotte player clearly went for the guy's head and got ejected from the game. So
yeah. All right, so we'll move on from that and just touch up on the rest of the scores here in college. So now we're talking about Lamar again. Texas A&M won 62-3, and unfortunately, we all put our faith in Lamar to not to win the game, obviously, guys, but to cover the 43.5 point spread that Texas A&M was given. They could not do that. The next game here, Clemson at Syracuse. Nate predicted the Carrier Dome to be rocking. I don't think it was rocking too much, but especially at the end, Clemson wins 41-6, and I was the only one that got that right. And Connor was messaging me throughout the game, or at the end of the game, because I didn't have much confidence at halftime that Clemson would be able to cover the spread, but they ended up going up by 28 points, and Connor was like, it looks like you're going to lose the Clemson one. And at first I was like, oh, maybe he just didn't see it right. But then he said it again, and so I was like, oh, he actually thinks he's going to win this. It's like, I wonder why. I was like, because my TV's slow, like, I don't know, like, maybe something happened. But then he realized his mistake.
I was doing math wrong. I thought they were up by 27 instead of 28.
Yeah, so half point win for me. I mean, that's so close. The next one here, Northwestern State University of Louisiana. This is pretty interesting.
The Demons.
Yep, the Demons. They got a scary looking logo too, guys. Don't look it up. You might get nightmares. A 51 point spread for LSU, and it ended up being a tie. So that's pretty crazy. That the odds makers had a 51 point spread be a tie. I mean, geez. But Washington blew out Hawaii 52-20. Nate got that right. He's the only one. Florida State at Virginia. Virginia wins 31-24, a 7-point win, like the spread predicted. So we all picked Virginia and tied on that. Connor, you were going to say something?
I was like, going back to the Washington thing real quick. Yeah. You got to stop ripping on teams, man, because you ripped on Washington and it got us both the pick wrong.
I know.
Because last episode you were saying how you thought Washington was horrible, and I was like, yeah, I agree with you too, but that didn't work out. Washington must have watched our podcast and we're like, we're going to show those Coach Crew sports guys.
Yeah. And even FS useless too, and I said
that. Right, yeah.
So that's another example.
At least they still lost the game.
Yeah.
So.
Jeez. Oklahoma, I don't know if Eric heard me say that in the prediction video because he wasn't in it, but I said FS useless versus Virginia.
No. I did. I listened back to the last episode, but since I'm not a huge college football guy, I skipped to the NFL part. So yeah, I did not hear that. But
okay.
Our viewer Ashley will be upset with you for saying that about FSU, though. She's a big FSU fan, so.
Still make the comment. Still make the comment that they lost, though.
She'd probably agree, though. I mean, they're having a Tennessee type year, so like she'd probably agree here.
There was also, I saw a story about some kid is making like a GoFundMe thing to get $17 million to buy out Coach Taggart's contract or something. I'm like, geez.
Oh, no. That kind of reminds me back to when the Buffalo Bills fans started a Kickstarter to fund Nathan Peterman's retirement.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
So, Oklahoma continues their winning streak here in this season. Pretty big margins. We all got that right. They beat UCLA 48-14. Texas and Rice, this game scared me a little bit because Rice was scoring points at the end of the game, but Texas was able to cover the 31.5 point spread. We all got it right. And then Portland State at Boise State, late night. Yep. Late night West Coast game. And I went to bed not feeling good about my pick. Woke up, saw Connor had edited this, and it was green. I was like, "Hey, that's pretty good."
Yeah, I was keeping track of that game, and Portland State was actually hanging with Boise State for a little bit, but it finally eventually got out of hand. They won by 35. I was like, towards the end, I'm like, "Come on, Portland State, just like get a garbage time touchdown or something. That's all you need."
Yeah, Nate and I got that right. We all got the Oregon game wrong after Oregon dismantled Nevada.
It's 77-6.
Yeah, they only won by 32 against Montana, and you would normally put Montana below Nevada, but so we all got that wrong. And the +1 game of the week ended up not being a great game, as TCU ended up winning pretty big, but Connor and I both got that right. TCU beats Purdue 34-13. So that's our college recap of the week. I expect next week to be a little bit more interesting with the games. So look forward to that. Definitely going to be looking forward to watching those games more so than these games the previous week. But moving on to and let me pull up the standings for the college.
We can show the standings afterward after we do the NFL.
Do that at the end. Thursday night game. So this has been a little while since we're recording this. Tampa Bay at Carolina. Tampa wins 20-14.
Carolina gave me a survival strike.
Yep, that was Connor's survival pick, and unfortunately he got it wrong.
And I also picked too. I'm so glad I didn't. I'm glad I didn't pick them.
Yeah. So this is one where I should have picked like an underdog here. Tampa. I picked the wrong underdogs this week really to win, but we all got it wrong. And then San Francisco at Cincinnati. I thought this game would be closer than it was, but since San Francisco wins 41-17, Nate's the only one got it wrong, and we wish he was on to kind of get some more thoughts about why he thought Cincinnati was going. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be this big of a margin, but
well, now the question becomes: is San Francisco that good, or is Cincinnati that bad?
We'll find out as the season goes along about San Francisco, because they're in a pretty tough division right now, with both the Rams and Seahawks 2-0.
Well, and even though the Cardinals haven't won yet, they've still like Kyler Murray's looking okay. So,
so the Chargers and the Lions played a low-scoring game here. Detroit wins 13-10, and I was the only one that got this right. So this is my shining glory here for the week in that game. That was my best one.
Yeah, and this is where it ends too.
Yeah, it ends here. If you're looking at the top three, you'd be like, okay, Zach's pretty good. He knows his stuff. But it's gonna get a lot of red down on my side of the standings. So Minnesota at Green Bay, and I didn't watch this game, but I was following alongside the score as the game was going on, and Green Bay jumped out to a huge lead, and I was thinking, oh man, I guess we lost this one again. And then Minnesota fought back, but Green Bay wins 21-16, and my friend Kyle, who's actually a Packers fan, he texted me this morning, why is Clutch Crew Sports so down on the Packers? And it really got me, like I know the Packers struggled in their week 1 win, but I think I'm going to be less pessimistic about the Packers moving forward. Now they're 2-0. They're not going 16-0 or anything, but I'm starting to be a little bit worried about my pick for them to finish 4th in the division. But it's still really competitive.
Well,
yeah,
none of us picked them to finish higher than 3rd. I mean, I think Eric was the only one who picked them 3rd, and the rest of us had them last. So
yeah,
I mean, I know I'm going to pick them next week because they're playing Denver. So I'm going to be picking the Packers to win that game.
Is it in Green Bay?
It's in Green Bay.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to pick them too. But we'll get to the Denver game though.
Yeah.
My locks on this channel have not been very good. I'm gonna impose myself a ban from locking in the next episode.
Maybe I should do it though, because it seems like my locks tend to work out, and Zach's tend to not be very good.
Yeah, my locks, I feel like, are a little bit more
out there.
They're a little bit more out there than Connor's locks, but still, yeah. When I lock something, I don't do it, half-heartedly. I mean it. I didn't double lock it, but still, a lock's a lock. We can get into the lock versus double lock. Double lock is like, bet your life on it.
Like if you get it wrong, you're gonna be having some consequence that you got to do.
Yeah, like the Twitter. Yeah, some people.
We're not going into that yet.
Yeah, no, but some people on Twitter, man. I'm scared to see. I'm scared to go on Twitter. Certain Jalen Ramsey trades happen, but yeah. So Connor, you want to give your thoughts on the Vikings?
Actually, Eric.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Zach kind of covered the main points. I mean, this was a really crazy game because I remember when I was watching the Jags game, they're like, "All right, let's go to a game break," and they're like, "Oh, Green Bay scored again, and they're up 21-0," and I was like, "Whoa, oh my God! Like, how are they?" I mean, I was after the way they struggled against the Bears offensively. Minnesota is a pretty formidable defense. I was not expecting that, but I guess Minnesota obviously made adjustments defensively because then Green Bay didn't score again after that. But I want to give kudos to the Green Bay defense because I know we all knocked them going into the season, and then I even criticized them last week as an overrate, which I still wouldn't rate them as a top 5 defense, but. Yeah, I criticized them because I was like, oh, well, Mitch Trubisky was missing. He wasn't seeing that he had guys wide open and Green Bay wasn't covering well. But, to hold a Minnesota team with Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Stephon Diggs to, only 16 points and to, be able to fight them off at the end of the game, I'm going to give them some credit for that. So I don't know if I'm completely sold for sure on Green Bay yet, but I definitely have a little more confidence in them than I did when the season started. And I'm at least glad that since I'm the only one that had them in third while everyone else had them in last, at least if they do end up doing really well, I'll look the least bad out of the 4 of us. Yeah. But definitely, I mean, obviously I'm not a fan of them by any means, but I mean, I'm gonna give them kudos for their start of the season, beating 2 divisional opponents like that. So
yeah,
we'll see how they do going forward.
Yeah. So the next game here, Indianapolis at Tennessee, an AFC South clash, divisional clash, and the Colts win 19-17 despite 2 missed extra points from Adam Vinatieri, and we all got this wrong picking Tennessee. And the reason I highlighted this game and talked about it is I thought, that the struggles for the Titans against the Colts would end with Andrew Luck not playing because Andrew Luck had never lost to the Titans in his career as a Colt. And the Titans seem to always have the Jags number, but the Titans can never.
And the Jags always have the Colts number.
The Jags seem to beat the Colts a lot, and then the Colts always beat the Titans. So it's like a carousel of different things going on. And I'm just, wondering, this Tennessee team, like, I'm really, this seems to me like their Thursday night game against Jacksonville is going to be huge because in this division right now, 1-1 is leading the division. You've got Houston 1-1, Indy 1-1, Tennessee 1-1, and Jacksonville 0-2. So I don't know. We said this division was going to be the most competitive and the most, any of the 4 teams could win it, and this just seems like class. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like typical Tennessee, like they start out, they win week 1. I think they won week 1 last year, and they they win a game they're not supposed to against the Browns, and then they lose a game they're supposed to win at home. It just seems like Tennessee's MO to do stuff like that. And it's going to be, like I said, that Thursday night game. Obviously, I'm going to have my eyes attached to it, but they seem average, and that's what I think. They're not bad. They're not really good, but I wonder if average is going to be good enough to win this division with the play of the other three teams.
I don't know. I was feeling really, really bad about picking the Titans to finish last in the AFC South after last week, but now I feel a little bit better about it after this performance this week.
Yeah. For some reason, they can never beat the Colts. I don't know why, but Eric, I don't know if you watched the game, if you have anything to say about it.
I haven't gotten to watch this game yet. I'm definitely curious about it since it was so close, but I did not get to see anything yet. But I just it didn't end in a tie somehow.
New England at Miami. New England wins 43-0, and yeah, guys, I was wrong on this. I was the only one that picked Miami. Probably in this whole city I'm in. I don't know. Maybe some delusional Miami fans would pick Miami, but I'm probably the only non-Miami.
So
yeah, that's true. I'm around Miami, but I'm probably the only non-Miami fan to pick them to win the game. But you win some, you lose some. If I got this right, it would have been I spent a lot more time on this, but
I mean, you would have looked like a genius. I mean,
yeah.
It was business as usual for New England, though. I mean, yeah. So I don't want to talk too much more about that, but I got it wrong, guys. I'm sorry. And then Buffalo at the Giants here. Buffalo wins 28-14.
Yeah, hindsight's 20/20. I was thinking about picking Buffalo for survival, but I was like, no, I'm more confident in Carolina. So,
Yeah, so we all got that right. And Josh Allen was quoted saying, "There's only one team in New York," which
is true.
It's true. They are the only team in New York. But obviously, he meant that because they had beaten the Jets and Giants, who have New York in their name, even though they play in New Jersey. But I don't know. Do you like that, Connor? I mean, because it seems a little bit arrogant to say something like that.
It's a bit brash, but I mean, I can't argue the fact that it's true, though.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's the way that Buffalo fans think. I mean, just the team and the fans, they get really upset when everybody starts talking about these other teams in New York, and Buffalo's like, well, we're actually the only team in New York. We are New York's team.
Yeah.
The Giants and Jets are New Jersey's team. Sorry, my voice went out for a second there. But yeah, I mean, I know it does seem a bit arrogant for a young quarterback who hasn't really proven himself yet. So, but I mean, young players like to shoot their mouths off. I mean, I know being Jaguars fans, Jalen Ramsey likes to do it a lot. So, we'll see. I mean, I know happy for my dad though. Yeah, I mean, it's the first time in a while that the Buffalo Bills have started 2-0. So, who knows? Maybe it's their year. I don't think so yet. I mean, playing the Jets and Giants doesn't sell me at all on Buffalo yet, but it's definitely a good start. You'd rather be 2-0 than 0-2.
And they still got 2 games against Miami on their schedule too. So.
Right.
Yeah, well, one of those will be my survivals pick. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, I think the big test for Buffalo going forward is going to be to tell me because they're playing Cincinnati next week, so they have another pretty easy game next week that they should win. But the big test for me on how good they're going to be is in week 4, they have their home game against the Patriots. So if they can go out and win that, or at least make it a close game, then maybe I'll be a bit more sold on the Bills. But if they go into that game and just get blown out again, then it's just okay, because they gave New England a fight last year in Buffalo. They just were handicapped by having Derek Anderson at quarterback and all that stuff. But we'll see.
Yeah, Seattle at Pittsburgh's our next game here, and Seattle wins 28-26, another close win. Seattle's 2-0, but combined from their 2 games, they've only outscored opponents by 3 points. So that's really interesting. And Eric was the only one that got that right. We kind of made fun of him a little bit on the last show about, wow, I wonder what Eric's doing picking Seattle, but
no explanation needed.
Yeah. I don't know if you caught that, Eric.
I did. I did
okay.
notice that. Yes, I didn't notice the FS useless thing, but I did notice the comment about me being the only one picking the Seahawks. So I caught that.
Okay. But since the Steelers are Connor's team, and obviously big news with the quarterback position, you can give your thoughts, Connor, on the game and the outlook for the Steelers in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't terribly optimistic about this season to begin with. Like, I still thought we were going to win the division and that we'd make the playoffs. I didn't think we were going to make a deep playoff run or anything, but yeah, now it's looking like Zach actually sent me something on Twitter when the news was broken that Roethlisberger is going to be done for the season, and he said, "So where do you think this is going to take you?" And I said, "I think this is going to be the first time that the Steelers have a losing season under Tomlin." Like, I don't think it's going to be, like 3-13, 2 and anything like that. But I think like 6-10, 7-9 is probably a likely record for them at this point. Because they still have, they still have pieces. They still have Juju. They still have James Conner. They still have the offensive line. And, I mean, they just traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick from the Miami Dolphins. So that brings a big improvement to the secondary. But, having that hole at the quarterback when, for the past, how many seasons is it now? 13 or 14 seasons, you've had a Hall of Fame quarterback under center. And now, this is going to be the first time. Because, there's been times in the past where Roethlisberger's gotten injured and he's missed time. But this is the first time, since 2004 that they're going to be without Roethlisberger for the whole season. So, I mean, and we also talked about this before the podcast starts. It's pretty ironic that the Steelers traded away Josh Dobbs to the Jaguars a week before Roethlisberger goes down with a season-ending injury. Yeah. So, I mean, Mason Rudolph was brought in to be Ben's successor. So, I mean, he looked fairly decent in the time that he played. I mean, his second pass was an interception, so that's not good. But, after that, he didn't throw any more picks, and he threw 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, who knows if he can get it done? And would it surprise me if the Steelers still went on to win 10 games and, maybe contend for a wild card spot? I don't think so. I'm just not expecting it. So, I mean, I'm relegating myself to, I'm not getting my hopes up and not to be too disappointed if the season, doesn't turn out well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, which, I mean, unfortunately for me, this is the first time in a while that this has happened. But, I'm not a bandwagon fan. I'm not going to let the Steelers go just because they're having a bad season. I'm loyal to them. I've been loyal to them for my whole life. So, yeah, and the fact that the game, we still only lost the game by 2 points. I mean, it's signs of encouragement. I mean, and also early in the game, the Steelers had a fumble recovery for a touchdown called back on a kind of a ticky-tack block in the back call. Like Mark Barron was already gone for the touchdown, and the Steelers, like Tyler Lockett was trying to run him down, but he all likelihood wouldn't have caught him. But a Steelers guy came in and kind of gave him a little shove, and Lockett just like completely flopped, and the ref threw a flag for blocking the back, and like obviously they got to keep the fumble recovery, but the touchdown got called back. So yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Steelers. I mean, I'm not getting my hopes up. My expectations are a lot lower now, but I mean, I hope Mason Rudolph does good. But the other interesting thing to note about Ben is that he said he shut down any rumors that he said he's going to retire, because that was the first thing that came out was like, oh, is Ben going to retire? Like, he's contemplated it before, and Ben shut that down like really quickly. He said, no, I'm going to play out my contract, which goes through the 2021 season. So Roethlisberger will be back next season.
All right. The next game here, Dallas at Washington, another divisional rivalry game played this week, and Dallas ended up winning by 10 points. Eric watched the game, so I'll let him do most of the talking for it, and I was the only one with Washington. Another instance of picking the wrong wild card for
This was
Eric, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah.
But before Eric starts, on a side note, this was Nate's survival pick. He picked Dallas. So he got his right.
Good pick. And I'll be using the Cowboys next week since they're playing the Dolphins.
You see a trend building here. He picked New England this week, and then...
I've never been able to be. I haven't been able to be in the preview episodes yet because of my work schedule. So I'll just go ahead and give you that preview for next week, picking the Cowboys over the Dolphins for survival. But after watching this game, I thought going into the season that Washington had a decent defense on paper, but other than they did pretty well in the first half of the Philly game last week, but like since then they have not been doing very well defensively at all. In the second half last week, Philly just ran all over them, scoring like crazy. And other than it was either the first or second drive of this game where Dak Prescott had a bad throw behind a receiver that got deflected in the air and Washington intercepted it. Washington actually did have a 7-0 lead early in the game because of that. But other than that, I mean, this game was all Dallas. I mean, I think after that, Dallas scored like pretty much every time they had the ball. And Washington really just couldn't compete after that. I know they have had some injuries though, and so that might be part of why they're performing poorly on defensively right now. But after watching this game all the way through, like Washington's going to be a team that I will have trouble predicting, games to win for them when we, it's like we go through all these games and predict who we think is going to win each one. Like unless Washington's playing like the Dolphins or something.
Miami.
Which they will.
Yeah.
They will. I might, but until they have a game like that where I'm like, okay, they should definitely win that. Like I'm most likely going to be picking the other team. Like until maybe if they get some of their defensive players that are injured back, then I'll reconsider it. But they had some okay moments offensively, and I can't think of his name, but they have a young wide receiver. I think he was number 17. I can't remember.
Or something like that.
Yeah, McLaurin. That's right.
Yeah.
He had a pretty good game in this. Like so. They've got, some solid pieces, but I don't see them putting it together right now. They're a team that's going to be difficult to predict winning many games going forward. So I want to, obviously since Susan and her family are Cowboys fans, I want to be like, firm believers in the Cowboys, but kind of like Connor's thing with the Bills earlier, like I want to see Dallas play, somebody that's projected to be a good team first, because their first two wins were against the Giants and Redskins, and that was to be expected. And of course, same thing against Miami next week. They'll be expected to win that too. But so I'm waiting to see them play some, legit competition, and then if they keep winning, then I'm definitely a believer in them. So I'm definitely not a non-believer. I did pick them to win the division, but I want to see how they do against some good competition though before I view them as like a Super Bowl contender or anything like that. But solid game from Dallas, and that's pretty much all there is to say about this game.
Yeah.
Well, same as the Bills. The Cowboys' first big game is Week 4. They're going to be going to New Orleans to play the Saints. So
that's even hard to say now with Drew Brees being out.
Right.
I don't know. We'll have to see how New Orleans does in the next game without Brees, but Dallas might be getting a big break there with that circumstance.
Yeah. Arizona at Baltimore was our next game, and we all predicted Baltimore right to win, and they did 23-17. Jacksonville at Houston. Houston wins 13-12, and Nate and Connor both got it right. And I was actually kind of surprised that Eric picked Jackson to be. When I saw that, I was surprised that he picked the Jaguars. But I mean, obviously, regardless, we both wanted them to. You can only keep a certain amount of bias out of this, this type of deal. But man, that game was just so heartbreaking at the end, because I mean, so many chances to win. Like Ramsey had a pick six that he just dropped. Like he had a wide open lane to score. Eric, you probably remember it. Like, and
Yes.
it just hit him right in the hands. He had a great. I mean, like he had a great move to get there in front of Hopkins and get the. And he really had a pretty good game against Hopkins overall. And the defense did as well. Like the only touchdown Houston scored was off of a Minshew fumble that put Houston in the red zone, and they were right there to score, and they got a touchdown off of it. And obviously, though, the main thing people are going to be talking about this game with is the 2-point conversion call at the end. And I like the call to go for two. You're on the road with a rookie quarterback, and everything is going right for you. Like you've just had two successful. You're playing your best football right now. You want to get the 2-point conversion and take the lead, and the way your defense is playing, you'll probably win the game. So I was actually a fan of Marone going for it there, and just because of the situation. And I will say though, I was not a fan of the play call because they kind of did the opposite of what was going well for him. Because Minshew was, great on that drive, both running, like scrambling around and running for yards and throwing. I feel like they could have done like a pick play, rub play out to the side for like a run pass option. If he had a guy open, he could throw it. If he didn't, he could try and run for it. It's only 2 yards. And instead, they give the ball to Fournette and run it up the middle with an offensive line that hadn't been getting the job done in the run game, and Fournette, who hadn't really had too many big runs. Minshew actually had more rushing yards than Fournette did. And I say that I didn't like the call, but the ball was so close to crossing the goal line there. Initially, when I saw the play, I was like, oh, there's no way he made that. But then looking at the replay, I was like, oh, wow, it's actually pretty close. But, I mean, he was still short. And I feel like he could have done a better job on that play, put more effort in, and extended the ball out further because, like, if you fumble, like, the game's on the line there, you have to put the ball out across the goal line. If you fumble it, it's not like you're giving the ball to them at the 1 yard line. So that's my thoughts on it, on the game. And we'll get more into the Ramsey trade talk in the next episode once we know more information. But another thing I wanted to say was, and I was actually wrong on this because I was going to, before the trade request, I was actually going to enter the show with kind of like a mini rant with like how much coverage and attention and stuff was going on about the Ramsey versus Marone on the sidelines. Like I didn't see that as that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, you want to show the video because it's like, it's like a clickbait type of reactionary video, sensational sort of thing. But I mean, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's a little bit weird that it was the head coach, not like a position coach, but still, I feel like the game broadcast crew was talking about that way longer than I thought was necessary, but it ended up being a trade request after that, so I can't fault them or can't really rant about that. But that was live when I was watching it. I was surprised by how much they were talking about that, and I thought it was kind of unnecessary because people get emotional. It's an emotional game, but Eric, you're a fellow Jags fan. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, and I actually disagreed with the 2-point conversion call completely going into it. I mean, it's weird because it's like it's for all of the same reasons that you said, but I feel differently because the Jaguars had actually had 2 scoring drives in a row, and they had a field goal, and really the field goal drive probably could have been a touchdown, but they had some offensive penalties that held them back. So, but even still, they had a field goal and a touchdown in back-to-back drives. Houston's offense hadn't done anything other than that basically freebie red zone touchdown from the Minshew fumble. Why not trust that you could go into overtime and either A, if you get the ball first, go down and score again, or B, if you go on defense first, that the defense can hold them again, and then the offense go down and score to win the game based on the way you're playing? Like, why risk it all on one play? And I know it's only 2 yards or whatever, but I mean, obviously though, it cost him at the end. I mean, and obviously hindsight's 2020, but I felt like going into it that I didn't like it before they, like when the commentators were like, oh, they're leaving the offense out there. I was like, whoa, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I didn't like it.
To be fair though, I will say, like, that's generally I generally do like going for 2. I don't like when teams play it safe. I mean, I was even more so glad that they did because they were having success at the time for that. But generally, I am the kind of fan and person that is like, hey, if you can't get 2 yards on one play, you don't deserve to win. That's the way I look at it. Like, if you can't get 2 yards, then, you know, you shouldn't deserve to win the game. But that's just my thoughts on it. I want to hear Connor.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if it was like the opposite, if like the Jaguars had been winning the whole game and then suddenly Houston had come back and got the lead and then we score again to like be down by 1, in that case, I'm more willing to go for 2 because I'm like, man, the other team's got a lot of momentum. You know, they've scored a bunch of points in a row. We're probably not going to be able to stop them in overtime. Let's see if we can win the game here and get the 2-point conversion. Like, if it had been like that, I think I would have been a lot more okay with them going for the 2. But I felt like all the momentum was on our side to not risk it all on one play. But yeah, Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, my opinion is that I have to agree with Eric's side on this, is that I agree that if you are, like, you know, your defense has held the Texans to, I mean, obviously, you know, 13 points, but like you said, their only touchdown that they got was that, was when they had the turnover, and the short field and the turnover. So if your defense has just been dominating them like that, and also your offense is hot, you know, it's kind of like a situation to where, like, I remember if I go back to the Super Bowl 51 with the Patriots and the Falcons, like when the Patriots got that, you know, game tying touchdown, or like, you know, the touchdown to make it 28-27 at the end of the game, why they went for the extra point instead of the 2-point conversion, because, you know, their offense had all of the momentum in the fourth quarter. Their defense had been shutting down the Falcons in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, trust your defense, take the extra point, trust them to get a stop, which obviously they didn't have to because the Patriots got the ball first. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that was their mindset, was they were going to trust their defense and that, you know, and they were going to trust their offense to get the points. So, yeah, like, I get a lot of, like I said, I mostly agree with what Eric was saying, that if the other team was winning the whole time, or like if they had, you know, had the momentum, then yeah, go for 2, take the risk, it's worth it. But in that scenario, I think the Jaguars really should have just kicked the extra point and gone to overtime when they had the momentum.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely something we disagree on, because like I see your points, like it's totally contradicting though. It's not like different things. Like we're talking about the same thing, but like I'm like, okay, they're doing so great, just get one more play. You're already playing great, you might as well keep doing it. But then like you're saying like, oh, you're already playing great, just let it go to overtime and then keep playing great. But yeah, so I mean we'll see, if that costs them later in the season, but really, really close game. And then Oakland at Kansas City. We all got that right. Kansas City won 28-10. I should have used that as my survival pick. But
that was a much lower score than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Credit Oakland for holding KC to 28. As crazy as that sounds, like they did a good job for for only holding Kansas City to 28 points. And then Chicago at Denver. This, was a pretty interesting game. It was my survival pick that I lost. Chicago won 16-14, game-winning field goal. But Connor was following this game closer than I was, so I'll let him talk about this.
If I want to give like a little mini rant here for a second, I want to rant on Fox, Fox Sports, because, I mean, I was messaging Zach when this was going on, this game was really close and it was going down to the wire. And, whereas on Fox at the time, was at least, in certain areas of the country, this game was on. But for most of the country, including North Carolina, Florida, Texas, where we all live, it was the Rams and Saints was on. And the fact that at that time, when this game was so close, the Rams and Saints, the Rams were up 27-9. Like, we're going to get to that in a second. Like, it was already 27-9. There were 2.5 minutes left, and the Rams had the ball. And I'm like, why can't you just, switch over to them? Like, this game is over. Like, obviously, barring some miraculous miracle somehow, some way, which wasn't going to happen. Why can't you just switch over to the Chicago-Denver game and show that? But oh no, the NFL has all these rules as to where we can't show these games, and it's like I don't understand why they can't do that. It just seems silly to me, but I guess it's all to do with money and stuff. So anyway, but the end of the game was crazy. I mean, I know just that last sequence of plays for Denver, like how they had the PAT literally took 3 different tries. The fact that they went down there and it was a beautiful pass from Joe Flacco to Emmanuel Sanders for the touchdown, because the drive before that, Denver had a chance to tie the game before that, but Flacco threw an interception in the red zone, which I was watching that game and I was like, oh, typical Joe Flacco throwing interceptions in the red zone. And then they started driving down there, and I was like, Flacco's going to find a way to screw it up again. I watched him so much playing for the Ravens. But no, beautiful pass to Emmanuel Sanders for the touchdown. And then the craziness happened where they were like, okay, they had the same mindset that the Jaguars had. Like, they wanted to go for 2. They wanted to win. Like, they had the momentum. They wanted to do it. So they went for 2 and they got it. But then it got called back. I think it was illegal formation or an illegal substitution, some 5-yard penalty that Denver got called for. So then they were like, okay, well, now instead of being 2 yards away, we're 7 yards away. So let's just kick the extra point and, maybe send it to overtime. So they go to kick the extra point, and McManus misses the extra point. So they're thinking, oh, man, well, that sucks. Now the game's over. But then Chicago gets called for offside. So now it's moved back to the 2-yard line, and Denver thinks, okay, well, let's go for 2 again. Let's try this again. And they get it. So Denver finally gets it on the 3rd try, and they go up 14-13. And then who would have guessed that for Chicago, they would win the game on a 53-yard field goal? Granted, their kicker that they have now is a lot better than Cody Parkey, but after what happened last year, I don't think anybody expected that to happen. So.
It's in Denver too, so that gives the advantage. But still, that
doesn't. It helps with distance. It doesn't help with accuracy.
Yeah, that is true. But so Denver saw their home opening game losing streak end. It's just unfortunate. I had to predict the one that they ended their streak on.
Yeah, since 1999, they had lost a home opener.
I guess it's every 20 years, but so we gotta wait 20 years for them to lose again in their opener at home. But I don't know, guys.
Are you gonna lock that?
No, I'm not locking anything for a while. So I took the survival strike there. The next game, New Orleans at Los Angeles Rams. Like Connor mentioned before, the score was pretty lopsided, 27-9 in favor of the Rams. And I guess this was kind of like the Detroit one, the only other one where I picked the Rams. I was kind of surprised nobody else did, but I was the only one that got that right. And Eric, you want to talk about another instance of officiating kind of screwing over the Saints?
This one, I wouldn't say it was as crazy as the NFC Championship game because obviously it wasn't like at the very end of the game in a close game, but this was still a sucky moment for the Saints because Goff clearly fumbled on a pass and when he got his arm hit, and Saints player scoops it up, about to run in easily for a defensive touchdown, but it didn't count because the refs blew the whistle, blowing the play dead.
It's like Miles Jack all over again.
Yeah, man, I mean, it blows my mind when these refs, when these plays like this happen, that they don't let it play out because they can always use the review to go back and overturn it if they need to. But when you blow it dead, you can't say, oh, well, they still get the touchdown. So, I mean, and obviously the Rams won the game 27-9. So you would think, well, maybe that probably didn't have much of an effect on the game, but it was pretty early in the game. So who knows how things would have played out. I mean, based on the score, you would think the Rams probably still end up winning, but that type of stuff is huge in games like that. And I know I was watching a little bit of the Browns-Jets game at the end, and I guess they had some guy who's like, I can't remember his name, but I guess he's like the head of officiating or something, and he addressed how they got that wrong, and they needed to be better next week because they had that critical mistake or whatever. So, I mean, I'll give them kudos for admitting they were wrong, but if you're a Saints fan, you don't want to hear that.
Yeah, no, that doesn't make
sense. You're feeling like you got screwed again.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
The Saints are a team that, obviously they're not my favorite team, me being a Jags fan, but I like them. Drew Brees is my favorite player in the NFL, and of course he got hurt, which sucks. But
he's gonna be out for 6 weeks.
So as long as he's on the Saints, they're a team I want to be cool with. So really, and I like Alvin Kamara too, being a Tennessee Vol. So I like the Saints, but man, that really sucks for them. That it seems like this keeps happening to them.
Yeah.
Want the Rams to lose to stick it to Uncle Mike.
Hope he's not listening.
Shout out.
Yeah, make it better by saying a shout out. The Sunday night game, Eagles at Falcons, and the Falcons ended up winning 24-20. Connor and I got it right, and I watched parts of this game. This came down to the end too, so it was like the Bears, Broncos, Texans, Jags, last possession, and really what I noticed a lot was a lot of injuries. I mean, Philadelphia had to deal with almost every receiver getting hurt in some way, and then some offensive linemen getting hurt. Wentz got hurt, but came back and played. So to me, and it was at Atlanta, to me, while Atlanta won, they really had to win this. If they had ended up losing with all these injuries going on with Philly at home on the Sunday night game, already 0-1, this was a must-win game for them, I think, to, because you don't want to go down 0-2. The percent of making the playoffs is 12% of teams that are 0-2 end up making the playoffs. That's not very good. And so I feel like they kind of had to win this, but it wasn't as inspiring as maybe it could have been, or maybe I thought it was going to be, considering all the stuff that was happening to Philly. But in the NFL, a win's a win, and I know they're glad they had it. Philly had a chance to win the game at the end, but they couldn't get it done. And I don't think this is gonna make, I don't think Philly's gonna fall off the map after this loss. They're still gonna be in it, and so that's kind of my thoughts on the game. But Connor watched it more in depth, so he can share his thoughts too. So
yeah, I think the main thing for Atlanta in this game was just Matt Ryan again. I mean, Matt Ryan hurt them a lot in the game against the Vikings, and he was just making some stupid throws. I mean, there was like a sequence where there was like 3 or 4 possessions, and like 2 of those he threw interceptions on, and he threw 3 total in the game. And some of them, like one of them, he threw it into like triple. Like he was trying to force it to Austin Hooper in the end zone, it was like triple coverage. I'm like, why would you even throw that? Like, maybe like why not like throw up a fade to Julio Jones or something, like instead of trying to throw it into triple coverage. But so I think that's what really kept Philadelphia in the game, was just Matt Ryan playing horribly, because the rest of the offense, I mean, Devontae Freeman didn't have the most inspiring game. But, I mean, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley were making plays all over the place. So, I mean, a pretty big game for them. And the defense, I mean, they held Philadelphia's offense to 20 points. I mean, I know you said Wentz got hurt and the offensive line was a little bit banged up, but Wentz was only out for one possession. Which, a side note on that, Josh McCown was on that possession. And, like he was leading the charge. And I have no idea about halfway or towards the end of that possession, they put Wentz back in the game. And I couldn't for the life of me wonder why they did that, because McCown was actually playing really good. And, they were marching down the field with McCown at quarterback. Why would you take the hot quarterback out? And then you're putting in this, putting Wentz back in. I know he's good and all, but Wentz has been sitting on the sideline the whole possession, and McCown is out there making throws and getting first downs and stuff. So it's like you kill the whole momentum of the drive by doing that. And, sure enough, Philadelphia only came away with a field goal on that possession. So I don't know why they did that. But then they had when Philadelphia went down the field for that final possession, I mean, they Zach Ertz, Zach and I also talked about this at the end. It was a 4th and 10, and Zach Ertz caught the ball about a yard short of the first down. And credit the Atlanta guy, it was a ridiculously good tackle. But, Zach was saying how he thought Ertz could have stretched out more.
Yeah, I thought he could have. Kind of like the Fournette thing. You got to put a little bit more effort with the game on the line.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if it was a normal 3rd down, like in the middle of the game, but you got to try a little bit more, because if you fumble it, like the game's going to be over if you don't get it. So you might as well try and do it, but try harder, I should say.
Right, yeah, because that was my reasoning. I was like, well, I'm pretty sure the reason why he didn't do that was, A, I thought, he was worried about fumbling, but B, I think in his mind, he thought he already got it, because he was really close.
Yeah.
But I think he kind of realized too late. He went to go stretch the ball out and was like, oh, now it's too late, because now I'm getting pulled back. So I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, so, and then the Monday night game that concluded before we started the show, the Browns had no problem in the win against the Jets, 23-3, and poor Eric for picking the Jets here and not going back to change it before it started. He was the only one that got it wrong, but I know he was upset about it.
I did make this pick before it came out that Sam Darnold had mono, so but I also, in fairness, I didn't go back and change it, so
yeah. You did have time.
Yeah, I wouldn't have cared if you changed it, but
well, I guess because y'all had already done the preview podcast. And
yeah, that's true.
Weird if then on the results I changed it, be like, oh, you changed it after. I don't know. I just
it's only one game. It's not gonna matter in the course.
If I lose the overall season standings by one game, though, I will be pissed at myself for not going back and changing.
If you lose by one
tied,
game, if it's a tie, right?
Oh man, hopefully that shouldn't happen. So.
Yeah, with all the games and stuff. All right. Yeah. But yeah, that's gonna wrap this up, guys.
I guess we should check the standings before we wrap it up.
Oh yeah. We're talking about them right there. So here we are, guys. So the NFL record, I'm 16-15. Eric's 18-13. Connor's 19-12, and Nate is in first place with 21-10 as his record. And then going from worst to first in the college games, Connor and Nate are tied at 20-23, and I'm leading at 24-19. So those are the standings, and the first place is still the same from week one. Nate's still leading NFL. I'm still leading college, but it's closing a little bit. The margins are closing.
Definitely in the NFL, because Nate only got 2 wrong in the first week. So
yeah, 2 wrong, and now he's got 10 losses. So that's a pretty big difference. But yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll have the predictions video coming out on Friday with, stories and stuff with these trades and more knowledge about injuries and what we think will happen in week 3. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Peace.